That's an old announcement. That's something that NVIDIA has been saying for a while. And frankly, no one knows when that's going to happen, whether that's going to happen. The ability of NVIDIA to manufacture advanced AI chips, this is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And by the way, mostly it's done by TSMC, which is not even NVIDIA. It's a Taiwanese company in Taiwan. And so, yeah, like lots of people are making a lot of promises. This involves a lot of investment, and in order to invest, you need to have certainty. If in order to invest billions of dollars in new fabs and that kind of stuff, you need to be sure about what the overall economic and geopolitical outlook is. And right now, no one has a clue. It's just chaos. And so insofar as that is going to happen, it's just being made more difficult by the constant back and forth and changing of minds that we're seeing out of this White House.
Yeah, Justin, I wanted to ask you about that chaos because I selfishly asked our team here to print me out a sheet of where all the tariffs stand, and frankly, I'm still confused. So I'm wondering if when you look at this landscape, are you seeing any kind of method to the madness?
I'm seeing a lot of madness is all I'm seeing, and it's all that anyone on Wall Street or any CEO is seeing. Look, Friday afternoon, let me take you back all the way several days ago to Thursday. We thought the tariff on Chinese semiconductors was 125%. They woke up, the White House woke up the next morning and realized they'd misread what they thought, and they thought it was 145%. Then by Saturday morning, it was down to 0. And then by Saturday afternoon, it was yet to be announced and coming in a month's time. This is just chaotic. This is impossible to do work in. The point that Felix Salmon just made, that it's very difficult to make long-run investments when you don't know the business environment, is one thing. It's very difficult to run a company when you don't know that you'll be able to get the inputs that you need at a reasonable price, or that the US is not going to enter a recession just around the corner.
And President Trump did say in that meeting, they're looking into some more exceptions, temporary exceptions, maybe for some of those inputs for auto parts coming in Canada. He said, but to Felix's point, nothing is certain yet. Felix, I also want to ask you about this concern. More than 60% of CEOs now say they expect a recession in the next 6 months. What indicators are they watching, and what are you seeing?
I mean, there's a pretty good chance, to be honest, we're in a recession already. If you look at the consumer confidence numbers, the inflation expectation numbers, and just the general wealth effect of people seeing their 401ks imploding, there's a lot of indication out there already that consumers are just not being excited in terms of getting out there and spending, consumers, of course, being the big driver of 70% of the economy. Add on to that the fact that businesses have so many calls on their cash right now. They're being asked to absorb a whole bunch of the tariffs and not pass them on to consumers. They're being asked to invest in new plants. They're being asked to pay higher interest costs because interest rates are rising. So they need to spend all of their cash in like 3 or 4 different places. There's just not enough money to go around. And if they can't spend it in all those places, then you get that recession.
And Justin, we've seen consumers rush out to car dealerships. My mom ran out to get a new iPhone this weekend. Could we see a short-term boost in consumer sales, and could that offset some of this uncertainty and pain?
So that short-term boost, the reason your mum went to buy the iPhone is it's imported. So that means what's going to go up is imports. You know who that's helping? Not the United States economy. And so when you're thinking instead about things that you might get built in Australia, in America, say you were thinking about in addition to the house, that's something where you'd use American construction workers. Right now, you'd be like, well, I'm not sure where I'm going to get steel and aluminium. I'm not sure what the price of lumber is going to be. And those are things that people are going to delay.
The exemption was seen as a much-needed reprieve for tech giants. Apple has been one of the hardest-hit companies, losing nearly $640 billion in market cap within days of the president's Liberation Day tariff announcement. So a lot here, the exemptions.
Well, the takeaway here is just more uncertainty and more mixed messaging from the administration. It was revealed that late Friday night, they quietly rolled back a lot of the tariffs against the semiconductors and other chips being made in China. Then there was a sense of optimism of the market, like, okay, well, at least part of this, that he's going to try to de-escalate the trade war. But then, Katty K, we heard from Commerce Secretary Lutnick yesterday saying, no, like we're pulling these back, but there's going going to be more. We're going to put more targeted tariffs on these electronic equipment in the weeks ahead. And then we heard from President Trump the same. So I'll be very curious, as I'm sure most of the world is, how the markets will look when they open at 9:30 in reaction to this. But the bottom line is, business leaders, investors, average Americans, average citizens of the world have no idea what the economic policy is right now of this White House.
Yeah, I mean, we've already spoken about the confusion, right? Are the tariffs on? Are they off? Are certain products exempt? Are they not exempt? What happens in 90 days' time? What happens in 30 days' time in some cases? And the administration isn't clarifying that confusion. When it sends people out over the course of the weekend, you would think that on Sunday shows they would make an effort to have a united front and explain exactly what's going to happen so that when the markets open on Monday morning, there was some sense of clarity. But there's also a question of competence, of how much competence is there in this administration when it comes to the handling not just of the American economy, but also of the world economy. And I think that's why you have, I mean, Richard, I don't know what you're hearing, but what I'm hearing from other countries, particularly from European leaders, the text that I've been getting over the last few days is we don't really trust this administration to steer what is a kind of global good, the international trading system, in a direction that is going to be the best for everybody. And so we're wondering how we can look elsewhere and what that looks like. What are you hearing on what alternatives America's trading partners are looking at and what they're coming up with?
First of all, Kadi, you have a future in diplomacy. That was an understatement. They don't understand.
My dad was not a diplomat for nothing.
There you go. They don't understand. They don't trust. There isn't. You can't have confidence because you don't have competence. And it's almost that simple. And it affects not just other governments, but CEOs. How are they supposed to make 5- and 10-year commitments when they don't know what the environment's going to be in 5 days? This is just going to slow economic growth. I think for others, what we see with the tariffs is if you are heavily involved with the United States economically, which historically has been to your advantage, now it's become a vulnerability. Because this is an administration that sees that as leverage, is willing to weaponize it. So I think what this does over time, people can't turn on a dime, but it pushes others away from the United States. They increasingly diversify their portfolios. I think China will be one of the beneficiaries. They'll look to trade with other countries around the world. They simply aren't going to want to be as dependent on the United States because we're too mercurial and we're too vindictive and too arbitrary. And that will be the takeaway from this.
So the Wall Street Journal editorial board has a new piece entitled Trump's Exceptional Tariff Weekend, and it reads in part this: Mr. Trump first makes U.S. companies less competitive, then he and his administration pick exceptions worthy of help to remain competitive. Politicians, not success in the marketplace, pick business winners and losers. Exemptions would also undermine the administration's legal justification that his tariffs are needed to meet a national emergency. Imports of glassware and umbrellas from China are an emergency, but imports of electronics aren't. All of this exposes the political nature of tariffs. Some industries benefit, but others don't. Welcome to the new tariff economy, where you still pay onerous taxes, endure punishing regulation, and now must also navigate the political minefield of arbitrary tariffs, which ultimately make everybody have to come begging for their exemption. And I think the president used a term that I won't say on television, but something like that.
Yeah, they don't have a plan. Just to say that very bluntly,
Feels like that.
We are trying to interpret, almost Talmudically, what's actually going on here. What is the intent behind this? And they don't know. And so for me, Mika, when it comes to like what the market is a measure of what people think is going to happen, right? So Heilman, if the market is a function of what smart people think is going to happen in the future, and you have an administration whose policy is entirely reactive, and there is no consistency, there is no principle. It's all about them reacting to things almost independent of the people inside of it. I just wonder how you make sense of that tension, which feels like it's playing out with a clarity because of the nature of the stock market that we actually haven't seen until this current cycle.
Yeah, Pablo, I think the market, there's a kind of the phrase that people use all the time about the stock market, which is, there's a difference between the stock market and the real economy. We hear that all the time. And there is a difference between the stock market and the real economy. But in this case, what you've seen since the tariff jihad on the part of the Trump administration began is the market reflecting one thing really clearly, which is that the market thinks that consumers are going to get hammered in this trade war, and the market is looking at the consumer-driven part of the economy and saying we are headed towards a recession. And that's the one thing that the market has been kind of consistent about. With we had the couple times last week we had these surges in the market, but if you look at the market's performance over the last 3 weeks or so, when it became clear that Trump was serious to one degree or another about having this massive tariff regime, and the deeper we get into it and the more that this unpredictability, the capriciousness, the selectivity, the reactiveness, all of those things are adding up to what Richard was talking about a second ago, which is that the United States is losing its most cherished asset, which is that it's a reliable, trusted trading partner around the world. And the market is telling us that the loss of that asset means that consumers are going to pay a huge price for that going forward. The ultimate bet that the market is making is that we are, with each day, getting closer and closer towards an inevitable.
People who are doing this for a living and the American people more broadly being affected are sounding the alarm, saying that Trump has destroyed confidence. He can go to Wall Street and the stock markets and whatnot, visit these places, and the people are not going to be applauding him because in some cases, a lot of the Wall Street types, the big business types, the capitalist class, they're generally more pro-Republican than they are pro-Democrat, right? Not everyone, of course, but that's generally the case, right? One of the reasons is that the Republicans will pass policies that hurt workers and help capitalists. That's the reason. But all of that only benefits the rich if Trump doesn't destroy the whole economy. And again, even if you support the Trump tariffs, even if, and I'm not saying you should, but even if you do, you can't support tariffs as he's done them because the policy needs to be clear, it needs to be solid, it needs to be firm, it needs to be transparent, and it needs to be followed. You say we're going to put tariffs on these places for this long, for this reason, and if we are going to get rid of them, here's the context, the specific things we need to see for that to happen. And you make that crystal clear to everyone, both to your global trading partners, but also to consumers and businesses at home. Because what we've seen is people get screwed. We've seen some people say that I can't run a business because one day I got a tariff, the next day I don't. And I've seen some people say, well, actually, when Trump announced the tariffs, I started the process of building new factories, getting new equipment, because maybe I could manufacture things here now that I couldn't. And that could bring back some jobs in some isolated cases. But then the next day, Trump says those tariffs are canceled or at least postponed. And now I'm screwed because I planned based on Trump's word, and his word meant S word. Everyone loses here because he has no plan.